Hey, what's up guys? It's Nick2. Today I'm going to be going over the Fury Warrior DPS rotation for you guys, both single target, AoE, anything that you could ever need to know, I'm going to be going over in this video to teach you guys how to do big boy damage as a Fury Warrior. Fury Warrior is in a decent spot currently. It's about to get another buff on Tuesday, which is 3%, but I imagine that is going to be the last buff that it receives for the tier. In terms of its damage, overall, Fury's okay. In AoE, it can do a lot of damage and even out DPS a lot of the other better specs that are better in Raid, such as in Holy DK. But that's pretty much only in AoE and in Mythic Plus. And it's still going to get beaten by specs like Windwalker Monk, Fire Mage, Hunter, etc. But the benefit of Fury in AoE is that it's on your cooldowns are pretty short and you have pretty consistent damage, although you do lack utility for stuff like Mythic Plus. In terms of pure single target, Fury is kind of towards the bottom, more so middle of the pack now with this buff, and then once you get a lot of gear, it's not super great, but hey, it's not too bad, and there's still a lot of people that really love playing this spec, and if you know how to play well, you can perform well with it. If this video helps you out, please make sure to drop a like and share it with people. I'm pretty new to making WoW content, so anything that helps me get off my feet helps a ton, so I would appreciate the support. Thank you very much. Before I get into the video, if anybody's interested in some one-on-one individual coaching from me, I do offer that. If you need help setting up your UI, getting better at like min-maxing little things with the rotation, or if there's some things you don't fully understand with the rotation, you can ask me pretty much any question that you ever have. Anything about, the raid, since I am 10 out of 10 Mythic, anything about Mythic Plus, etc., etc. Any question that you may have, you name it, I can probably answer it and help you out. And it's also better to just always have somebody to talk to if you have a question, and I'm there for that. So if you're interested, please message me on Discord or email me. And yeah, like I said, this video is only going to be pertaining to the rotation side of things. If you're interested in pretty much everything else that you could need to know about a spec, such as talents, legendaries, trinkets, gear, all that type of stuff, I mentioned that in a previous video. I just segmented these videos because I wanted to go in depth on each of them. So if you're interested in that other stuff, I would definitely watch that other video if you haven't already. But if you only need to know about the rotation, then you can just stick here. Otherwise, I would watch that video first. One thing I forgot to mention in that video was consumables. This is really quick. You want to use sharpening stones for both of your weapons just to increase your attack power. And then for your potion, you want to use potion of strength or main stat. Some people recommend that you use Phantom Fire potions and Shadowcore oil. The only reason you would ever do this is if you're in pure single target and you are very undergeared. That's the only scenario where that is going to be slightly better than using main stat. But at my gear, using main stat pot with main stat enchant weapon, not enchants, but sharpening stones, that just sims better. And the second that a second target gets involved, main stat scales way better than Shadowcore oil and Phantom Fire, since those things are locked to single target. Another thing I want to mention real quick is that when I made my video, my previous video, I recommended that if you're going to do pure single target, you want to use the Deathmaker legendary, which you can see I have crafted at 235 here. Turns out you don't actually want to do that. There were some bugs with the sims making making Signet appear worse than it actually was because it wasn't having you optimize for certain things in pure single target scenarios. Now that that has been fixed, it is now better than Deathmaker was in single target. And the fact that Signet is better the second that a second target is involved, or anything higher than one target is involved. Since Signet is better, I mean, I don't know what I'm saying. It's just better in all scenarios. Don't make Deathmaker. I lied to you. Apparently lied to myself because I didn't know that the people running the EPLs were that incompetent and didn't fix that. But whatever. I'm not going to go on a tangent. Just the TLDR, use Signet of Tormented Kings all the time. In this video, there's specific things in single target that you need to do to make Signet of Tormented Kings better. However, it's a very minimal optimizations, to be quite honest, and it's not that big of a deal. But if you don't already have Signet, your main priority should be to go craft this. Hello, this is me editing here. I forgot to mention that I'm only going to be going over the rotation if you are a Venthyr warrior. The reason for this is that Venthyr is pretty much as better in almost every single scenario for Fury Warrior. There are some people that play Night Fae and Kyrian. Sorry, I'm not going to mention that. Most of the things that I'm going to talk about are relevant for those covenants, and you can play around it, but it would just be too much to talk about all the covenants, and 99% of warriors are going to be Venthyr. If you aren't, I'm sorry if you feel excluded, but you can still watch the video. For people that are brand new to the spec, I'm going to go over some of the fundamentals. If you want to skip through this, because you already know, just skip through. I'll have timestamps in the description, so you can just skip through it. But going over the fundamentals, the main fundamental part of Fury Warrior is Enrage. Becoming Enraged increases your damage done by 34%. That number is based on your mastery, so I have 34% mastery. If you have 100% mastery, the damage done would be increased by 100%, etc. And it increases your haste by 15%. The 15% value is flat, static, that's never going to change based on anything. And it's also going to increase your movement speed by 10%. The way that you get Enraged is via Bloodthirst. Bloodthirst has a 30% chance to enrage you whenever you use it, and if you use the talent Fresh Meat, it then has a 45% chance to enrage you. The other way that you can get Enraged is via Rampage, which is your main damage dealing ability. Rampage costs 80 rage, and it's just going to do some damage, but it's also going to instantly enrage you the second that you press it. Fundamentally, Fury Warrior is a builder spender, meaning that you build with some filler abilities, and then you spend with Rampage. Rampage is the main source of damage as a Fury Warrior. Outside of that, Condemn does a lot of damage as well. That's not necessarily intended with the design of the spec, but that's kind of just how it ended up happening with the way the Covenant works. Outside of that, you do pretty good damage with Bladestorm in AoE scenarios. It does okay damage in single target, as does Raging Blow. And your main DPS cooldown is Recklessness. This is going to increase your rage generation by 100%, making the spec speed up a lot, and it also grants you 20% increased crit chance, which is basically just 20% additional damage during the CD. It's a minute 30, but when you use the talent Anger Management, this is on average going to be reduced to about a minute, and during Execute, you can even get it down to like 40 seconds with Lust and constantly being able to use Condemn and stuff, meaning that you can spend more rage, therefore reducing the cooldown of Recklessness more. I talked about talents in my previous video. In this video, I'm just going to briefly go over them. In pure single target, you want to use Sudden Death. The rest of them don't really matter because they're always static. The only thing that you would ever change is Sudden Death to Fresh Meat. In my previous video, I mentioned that in pure single target, you want to go Dragon Roar. The reason that this is no longer the case is because with Signet, the way that it works is that activating Bladestorm, Recklessness, or Avatar randomly casts one of the other two abilities. So in single target, you're still going to play Bladestorm because you are still using Signet, and whenever you use Bladestorm, it's going to proc another thing. So for example, I used it there, and it gave me 6 seconds of Recklessness. So you still want to use it in single target because of the fact that it can give you a buff, and you no longer use Dragon Roar. The only thing that you ever swap is Sudden Death in single target and Fresh Meat in AoE situations such as Mythic Plus. Everything else is static. In all honesty, Fury Warrior is a pretty simple spec. It's more so just about knowing what to do and when to do it. Therefore, you follow kind of a priority list. This priority list I'm going to mention is for pure single target. I'm also going to have all this typed down in the description, so if you find my verbal explanation to be inadequate, which I don't blame you for, feel free to just read down in the description. Hopefully that can aid you. I'm also going to provide some gameplay in a second here once I talk about everything, and I'll go over how I perform the rotation in real time with a clip that I have. So your pure single target priority list goes as follows. By the way, it's basically the same in AoE. There's some variation, but it's basically the same, but I'll go over that. Your first priority in single target is to be enraged. Being enraged is above all else because it increases the damage done of all of your abilities, so you don't want to use anything crazy, any like cooldown based thing basically whenever you are not enraged, because being enraged is the main source of your damage. The second priority is to use Recklessness on cooldown. Recklessness ends up being a pretty short cooldown, like I said, with Anger Management, and since it is such a short cooldown, you'd rather just get additional casts off rather than having to wait for it. So Recklessness on CD is generally how you want to play with it. Sometimes you can hold off if there's a specific reason to, such as the boss is just about to be in Condemn range or something along those lines, but generally speaking, just use it on cooldown. Next to that is Condemn. Condemn does a ton of damage. Pretty much just press it on CD whenever you're able to, as long as it's not going to overcap you on rage. And then you'd want a Bladestorm, and then Rampage, and then Raging Blow, and then Bloodthirst, and then Whirlwind. The reason for this priority list is basically just based on the damage that these things do. And yeah, real quick before I get into there's another thing called Bladestorm Rules. So the way that it works is that your Signet legendary, right, has a chance to activate Bladestorm, but then you also use Bladestorm in pure single target. There's some rules revolving around Bladestorm and when to properly use it. If you've ever played Fury recently, this is probably one of the main reasons you're watching this video, because sometimes it can feel a little awkward getting a Bladestorm proc in pure single target, and some people might not exactly know what to do with that. Before I explain all the rules, I'd like to mention a macro. So this is Very imperative if you're keen on doing maximum damage as a Fury Warrior, you want to have a Cancelaura Bladestorm macro. You can put this into pretty much any ability. The reason that I don't use it as a Bladestorm, the reason that I don't put this into Bladestorm is because if I press Bladestorm twice, I would instantly cancel it, and I've done that too many times. So I just put it into my Battle Shout. Anytime I want to cancel my Bladestorm, I just press my Battle Shout key, and since I'm in Bladestorm already, it's not going to be able to cast Battle Shout. It'll just cancel my Bladestorm instantly. Some people put this into Rampage, Raging Blow, Bloodthirst, Whirlwind, whatever. You can put it into anything. You can make it a standalone button. The macro literally just / Cancelaura Bladestorm. If you want it to be in something else, just put it into, basically just replace Battle Shout here with whatever ability you want it to be. And I'll link this I'll copy paste this in the description if you need it as well. So let's go over the Bladestorm rules for single target. By the way, this is pretty much only relevant for pure single target. Outside of that, there's almost never a reason to cancel Bladestorm just because it does so much damage into and above targets. But in pure single target, there are good reasons to cancel it, and this is why. Or these are the rules, and I'll talk about the whys in a minute. Sorry, I didn't really format this out in my head. This is kind of just how it's going. Okay. First rule, make sure to be enraged prior to using Recklessness or Bladestorm. Bladestorm has a pretty decent duration of about, it depends on your haste values, but basically, you never want to press Bladestorm when you're not enraged because then you're just going to do way less damage. The same thing goes for Recklessness because it's possible that when you use Recklessness, look, I procced a Bladestorm. If I wasn't already enraged, that would have been bad. Second, you want to cancel Bladestorm if you are either above 90 rage or if Condemn is off cooldown in pure single target. The reason for this is that Bladestorm doesn't do a ton of damage if you're in a pure single target scenario, and if Condemn is off cooldown, it is more value during that period of time, especially during your CD window. It is more value to cancel the Bladestorm and just Condemn as much as possible. The same thing goes that you don't want to overcap on rage. So if I Bladestorm and then it gets me to 100 rage, it's better that I just cancel it and just use Rampage because I'm not really gaining a lot of benefit out of staying in Bladestorm there. So generally speaking, you want to never cast Bladestorm if Condemn is off cooldown, and you never want to cast Bladestorm if it is going to overcap you on rage and you don't intend on canceling it. So in a perfect world, you would want to make sure that Condemn is on cooldown before you press Bladestorm, and you want to make sure that you're not going to overcap on rage. So preferably you want to cast it around 40 and below rage. Anything above that, you have a chance of overcapping. That depends on haste. That depends on if you're in Recklessness, etc. One other rule is do not cast Bladestorm on opener if your target is going to go under Condemn range within 8 to 10 seconds. I'll talk about what your opener looks like in a second here. This is like a very minor optimization, and you definitely don't need to do this. This can also mess up your timings based on the certain fight, but generally, the reason for this is that, let's say I'm on Shriekwing, I pull the boss, I pop all my cooldowns, and then basically what I want to do is during that period of time, I want to Condemn as much as possible because with my guildies and lust and everything, Shriekwing is going to drop below 80%, that initial Condemn range. He's going to drop pretty quickly. So then I'd rather save my Bladestorm for when he's out of the Condemn range because he's going to drop out really quickly. I'd rather get a bunch of Condemns off in that range and then save my Bladestorm to just do some damage and to build rage for me so I get another Rampage once he drops off. So this would basically look like I go in, I press all my stuff, and then 10 seconds later, once he drops under 80%, I make sure I have no rage and I cannot press Condemn anymore. I make sure that I'm enraged, I press Bladestorm, and it does some damage for me. You don't really need to worry about this too much, and I understand if that's confusing. You can ignore that fifth rule if you want, because that's like a very minor thing, but it is worth mentioning. Now let's go over the clips that I have. So here's one clip of me just running in single target, and I'll go over the abilities that I used and in what order I used them in. For some reason, the clip is in like 10 FPS or something. Hopefully it doesn't look too bad in the video, but hey, maybe it'll act as a slow-mo so that you guys can better see what's going on. I would ignore the damage, by the way. It's a target dummy, no lust, a bunch of other things. Just ignore the damage. And yeah, the point of this clip is basically to just show you how the DPS rotation plays out in practice and how you want to do your opener in single target. And of course, I'll talk about AoE in a second. Just while you're watching this, keep in the back of your head the priority list that I mentioned earlier. So basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to instantly charge, and then I want my first global to be Bloodthirst. The reason for this is that you want to get enraged as fast as humanly possible. As you can see there, my Bloodthirst enraged me, which is pretty lucky, and that's going to enable me to instantly pop Recklessness. If you, however, don't get enraged from your first Bloodthirst, you just want to build using your builders such as Condemn and possibly a Raging Blow to then be able to Rampage, so then you are enraged once you Rampage, and then you would Recklessness. Basically, your goal here is to just Recklessness as soon as humanly possible. So luckily, my Bloodthirst enrages me there, so then I'm going to instantly pop Recklessness. Me popping Recklessness gives me some rage, so then I'm going to spend that rage on a Rampage. And luckily, my Recklessness procced me an Avatar, which is actually a favorable outcome. Like I was talking about earlier, if I were to get a Bladestorm here, I would have just instantly canceled that. The second that I got the Bladestorm to proc, I would have just instantly canceled it because of the fact that I would have been at like max rage already, and I have Condemn available to me, so I would have just canceled it. But luckily I got Avatar, which means that my Signet proc didn't go to waste, and that is a favorable outcome. That is what I want to happen. So I'm just going to instantly just go into doing my big boy damage. I instantly Rampage. That's good damage, and then I instantly Condemn. And then as you can see, I don't yet have enough rage to Rampage again, so I'm just going to use a Raging Blow. It's going to overcap me a little bit, but that doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to be able to Rampage again here. I would recommend getting something that tracks your enrage. I will have a link to this weak aura pack down in the description, but getting something that shows you your enrage uptime is really helpful because you want to maximize how often you are enraged, and then if you drop out of enrage, you know that you can Rampage again and a whole bunch of other stuff. It's very helpful. So right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my Condemn is off cooldown, and then I'm going to instantly Bladestorm. And the reason that I did this is because I'm assuming that my target isn't going to instantly drop out of 80%. I'm not trying to save my Bladestorm. I'm just going to instantly use it. Basically, the whole point is to just get a little bit of rage gen, but also to get another proc from Signet. So this could have given me more Recklessness uptime or just more Avatar. Avatar, again, the favorable outcome here. So I got more Avatar uptime, so that's really good. The second that I proc it, I just instantly canceled it and I Rampaged. You can't really see because the clip is like kind of low frame rate. I probably could have canceled it slightly faster though. But I canceled it, instantly Rampage, and then I'm just going to Condemn. And I'm just going to keep following the priority system. Just Condemn when I have it available, Raging Blow outside of that, Condemn, Raging Blow, Rampage, Condemn. And then pretty much the only time you use Bloodthirst is if you really want to be enraged. So if I'm at like 70 rage, and I can use Bloodthirst to then enrage myself, so then when I use Rampage, my Rampage gains the benefit of the additional damage from already being enraged. Otherwise, Raging Blow takes priority over Bloodthirst, and you pretty much just use Bloodthirst whenever you don't have a charge of Raging Blow. So as you can see right here, I don't have a charge of Raging Blow available. I have nothing else to press, so I just press Bloodthirst here. And then if I did not have Condemn here, I would just use a Raging Blow, and then you just fill her with Whirlwind. That's pretty much what you do. In a second here, I'm going to end up stop pressing Condemn entirely just to show you guys what the rotation looks like when you don't have Condemn available. The spec really slows down when you don't have Condemn and you're not in Recklessness. You're kind of just spamming Raging Blow and Bloodthirst, and in what order, it's not particularly super impactful. You pretty much just press the buttons. As you can see here, I had like multiple dead globals of just pressing Whirlwind. The reason you do that is just because there's nothing else to do, and you just need to generate rage. That is pretty much the whole single target rotation. As long as you just Bladestorm properly, and you do all the stuff around that, and you just follow the priority list, the single target is very simple. The main rules to follow is literally to just press Condemn on cooldown, try not to overcap on rage, use Recklessness on cooldown, and make sure to use your Bladestorms properly. That is the main takeaway from the single target rotation. The AoE rotation, honestly, is basically the exact same thing. However, you just fill her with Whirlwind. So if you don't know the way that your AoE works, you have a meat cleaver via Whirlwind, where it causes your next 2 single target melee attacks to strike up to 4 additional targets, so basically 5 targets. So for example here, if I Whirlwind, by the way, I would get something to track this. I now have 2 charges of meat cleaver, so then when I Bloodthirst and Raging Blow, it hits all these targets rather than just hitting 1 target. So basically the way that you want to play an AoE is just every third global you want to be Whirlwind, basically, so that every single ability always cleaves. You don't always have to have the abilities cleave, such as Bloodthirst and Raging Blow, since they don't do a ton of damage, but generally speaking, that is the rule. It's basically the exact same as single target. The only thing is that you just fill her in with more Whirlwinds, and you never cancel Bladestorm in AoE. So this is what your AoE opener would look like. So as you can see here, I swap over to fresh meat. The reason for this is that in AoE, basically the way fresh meat works is that your first bloodthirst on a new target is guaranteed to enrage. If you're in Mythic Plus and you're fighting a lot of different targets constantly, you can basically game this to where you can have very high enrage uptime. So anytime that you're about to drop out of enrage, you can bloodthirst a target that you know that you haven't hit already and guarantee yourself enrage. This is also very good for when you open. You can instantly charge in, and it's not a gamble whether or not that first bloodthirst is going to enrage you. It's guaranteed. So you just charge in bloodthirst and you can instantly start doing your big dam, which is really good in Mythic Plus. In raid fights where there's AoE, if there's not a ton of new targets to where you can't really gain value out of fresh meat, then you pretty much just play sudden death. Something like Denathrius, you probably just play sudden death. Council of Blood, you could go fresh meat, but I think people will even go War Machine on that fight. Doesn't really matter. If you don't know whether or not you want to go fresh meat or sudden death on a certain boss fight, just take sudden death. Sudden death is very consistent. Fresh meat is only better if you know how to play with it well. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to charge in. Come on, Nick. There we go. Charge in, instantly bloodthirst. And then since that's going to instantly enrage me, I'm going to Recklessness. I got lucky here. My Recklessness proc a Bladestorm. That's what you want to have happen. In AoE, we're just going to sit here, let ourselves Bladestorm. We're doing big damn. We're happy. The second I get out of this, I'm going to Whirlwind and then Rampage and then Bladestorm again, because this Whirlwind enabled my Rampage to hit everything, and then my Bladestorm is going to hit everything for a lot of damage, and I have a full enrage uptime right here. And then luckily that procced me Avatar, which is going to do a bunch of damage. And then I pretty much just expend my Rampage there because my Bladestorm got me up to 100 rage. And then I'm just going to do the single target rotation, but just fillering in with Whirlwinds in between pretty much every button. And it's basically the same thing. As you saw right here, let's see, right here. Not right there, right here. As you can see, in single target, normally I would have pressed Raging Blow here because it's going to do more damage than Bloodthirst. But because I have the fresh meat talent, I know that my Bloodthirst here is going to guarantee me an enrage. And this is particularly good because it's going to guarantee me enrage so that my next Rampage gains the benefit of enrage. Because if you aren't in enrage, Rampage is going to do 30% less damage or however much mastery you have. And you're also going to lose haste for that period of time. But if you can just guarantee a Bloodthirst, then it's worth it to do that. But in single target, you wouldn't take the gamble. You would rather just Raging Blow and then just deal with having your Rampage not be not gaining the benefit of enrage. But because we're using the fresh meat talent and because we're playing around it properly, we can get a Bloodthirst there, guaranteed that our Rampage is going to be enrage, therefore getting us a little bit more uptime and just generating more damage overall. And then obviously right here, all these targets I'm able to condemn. One thing that's very important though in like Mythic Plus is swapping between targets so that you're not only able to gain the benefit from fresh meat, but also so that you can condemn as much as humanly possible. So let's say I went into the pack and I Bladestormed like this. It's very possible that by the time I'm done Bladestorming, one of these like 5 targets or however many targets there are in your pool, one of them is either still going to be above that 80% threshold or below the 35% threshold so that you can still meet cleavers and condemns. And that's going to be the most damage that you can ever do. If you're still very new to this, that should be the main takeaway for AoE, is that you want to get lucky with Bladestorm and that you want to be pressing Condemn as much as humanly possible because Condemn just does a ton of damage. Let me see if I still have it in details. Yeah, this is the damage breakdown for that pull that I did in the recording. As you can see, Bladestorm is the most of the damage, but Condemn actually ended up doing more damage than Rampage, and that's crazy. That is just the power of Condemn. I did press it a few more times, but that's just because I'm able to. So if you can Condemn, try to do that. Other than that, that's pretty much it. I might make a video going over some niche things here and there, such as like how to play properly with defensives, macros, little min-maxy things, but I'm not 100% sure I'm going to make a video like that. If there's enough requests for it, I might make a video talking about like little things here and there. Otherwise, I'll just leave that to the coaching. Yeah, hopefully this video helped. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if it did, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe for videos similar to this one, and make sure if you're interested in the coaching to reach out to me, and any one-off questions that you have here and there, I will be able to answer those as well with, free of charge. But if you want like a bunch of questions answered and stuff like that, that will be, it would be better to get the coaching for that. All right, thank you guys. Have a good one.